There's been a lot of weird stuff going on with Super Mario 64 lately, hasn't there? And if you're watching this video, then chances are you already know all about them, so I won't waste your time too much and get to the topic quick. Beforehand, I just want to say real quick that before you watch this, I suggest watching the videos on the Super Mario 64 Iceberg by Mishkos or Kaz and Midnight Mumbles. I might have links in the description. But they just go over everything you need to know that's in the Iceberg, and both videos will also give you some slightly different perspectives on the topics in them, so just do look over that. Anyway, to get to the list, I have 10 things that number is just done by coincidence that I feel like could have been added to the Iceberg. And the way I'm ordering this is that I'm starting with the most basic ones, like things that can just be at the tip of the iceberg, then eventually down to what be more towards the bottom. And the first couple of entries I'm actually going to start with, I'm a bit surprised weren't already in the iceberg. But anyway, with that, I'm going to get started now. The splashing fish is an Easter egg that most people didn't really know about until some years ago when it surfaced. And once it did, it became one of those things like, wow, we're still finding new things in this game after all this time. That's amazing. And basically what it is that if you have Mario splash on a surface of water, basically just one of his feet's in it and he's jumping up and down in place, there's a very rare chance that some fish will spawn and splash out. I believe it's about 1 in 256. This is just a neat, obscure Easter egg in the game that was just recently brought attention to, much like the 1-up in Womp's Fortress that is on the iceberg. The butterflies are another similar one, just like the fish, which I'm also surprised weren't already in the image. And basically what it is that people have probably always noticed the butterflies in Super Mario 64, but it wasn't until more recently, a few years ago now, where people finally figured out, by mainstream preferences, I mean how they actually work, meaning that the butterflies can actually spawn into a 1-up or a bomb. And most people never really knew about this until lately and just thought that they were a small little detail, and it was another mind-blowing thing that's a new discovery, quote-unquote, to the game. And yes, that's where those random bombs in Tall Mountain come from. This is probably the most simple thing I've got on the list, aside from maybe the next two. And all the giant penguin is that this is another tip of the iceberg thing, is that once you get 120 stars, talk to Yoshi, you get your 1-up rewards. That's one thing that's known. And then once you do a triple jump, you start sparkling. That's another thing that's known, but not really brought up, but just too small to be its own thing, I believe. But then another reward that happens is that the penguin that you raise at Cool Mountain will now be much bigger. And it's just a slightly more obscure thing from the other ones, just because there's really no reason to go back there once you have 120 stars. It's just a thing most players would probably skip casually. This has been mentioned before, and I believe it's in one of the videos I recommended earlier, but the rolling balls in Bomb Battlefield, once you first start the level in Star 1 to go face the king, there's only 2 rolling balls once you first enter the mountains area. But then after you beat him and start activating the later missions, there are now 3 rolling balls instead of 2. It's just another detail added to the game, much like the fog disappearing in Jolly Roger Bay, but less mysterious and weird, and it doesn't just go away forever like that. But it's just another small attention to detail that most people probably wouldn't notice at first. And on a side note, some theorize that the third ball is King Bob-omb's body if you want to be dark about it. This is another small Easter egg that most people would probably miss at first and not even notice, but then be like, oh wow, once they are told about it or notice. And all it is that in the final level, right before you get to the pipe where you face Bowser for the last time, if you stop and look at the pillars, there's a design on them that gets an 8-bit looking depiction of facing Bowser in the first Super Mario Bros. Game. Just another little thing that's a cool detail to the game that you'll miss, most likely. Beta versions were already mentioned in the Iceberg, however I feel like this is a specific element in it that could have been its own thing, that being the beta key that's found inside the booze. And this is just like something that's given more attention or talked about more, is just the mystery behind what exactly these keys would have been used for. It's unknown for sure if you would have had to defeat Boo's and go unlock all the doors in the mansion a la Luigi's Mansion, or if there was a more certain or special door this key would unlock. Another thing that adds to its uniqueness is the fact that people have tried restoring it in mods today, as you can find the key in the game's files, I believe. And sticking around this territory is something that I'm mildly surprised wasn't in the Iceberg, but I'm not either, is Super Mario 64 2. And that's of course a game that never saw full light. It was considered in development, and it was apparently supposed to go for the N64 disk drive. However, that was a commercial failure, unfortunately, since there were a lot of cool things and ideas that could have went for it. And Super Mario 64 2 was one of those things that was killed with it. One thing that's known is that it was apparently supposed to have multiplayer in it with Luigi, as you can see here with the famous mod that came out a while ago. But aside from that, there's not much known about the game's earlier builds, or nothing was ever seen about them either. Getting deeper in the Iceberg, if these were to be added, is the black box in Super Mario 64 DS. Now, this is a pretty big one if you know about all the rumors and theories about that game. And one reason why I'm assuming is that why it wasn't included in the image is that it just wants to stick to the 64 version. However, the ally with Infobit was also in there, and that's a DS version thing, though you could probably argue that it's in there because it's based on a change from the 64 version to the DS version. Anyway, this is just an obvious inclusion if we're to include any more DS stuff, and this is basically the big whole granddaddy of them. And all it is that on the file select screen there's a black box on the right side of the castle that kind of resembles a window or whatever. And once you actually go and play the game, it's not there, it only appears on the screen. And of course, people have linked this to the most massive theories, such as Waluigi being behind there. And Waluigi just leads to all of these different big tin can things that it's just a whole full thing of worms, like having to lose your caps at specific times, and having all of the stars and the white door that originally contains a power store becoming the purple door, and all of these other little hints in the game that leads toward Waluigi. It's just this big thing that you can find all sorts of info and theories and videos on. And I figure that you could just condense all of this to simply the black box, much like how the original Iceberg image just seems to condense all of the Luigi stuff into Alice Real 2401. This would just be one of the theory things that you would find deep in the Iceberg's image, and that being a secret area in the castle. This is just a very common basic rumor that you would be hearing spread around back then once the game was newer. Said, like, of course people want there to be a new floor in the castle, like a secret fourth one or fifth, depending on how you count the stairs in the foyer to be its own floor or not. But anyway, this is just something that you would dream about, and it just leads to all sorts of theories of how it would be laid out and such. And some might even think that there was one in the game's earlier builds, considering there were supposed to be more levels. But anyway, the image that I have here is by Mario Nova 64, and they've been doing all sorts of cool beta or alternate universe stuff for the game while this crazy stuff has been going on about Mario 64. So I definitely recommend checking out their channel for more of this stuff if you want to. It's just a really cool thing because this like reminds me of like dreams you would have about the game as a kid. Many people in the comment section of the video say that. And it also reminds me personally of when I was watching my cousin play this game when I was at a super young age. Like, for example, I just remember the castle looking more wondrous. Like, of course it did. I was a young child, like 2 to 3 years old. But another thing that's always bugged me is that I remember the Leaf of the Land painting looking a lot more like how it did in the beta version, like the area it's in. And that's always something that's kind of confused me to this day. But anyway, moving on. kind of like the last one I mentioned, playing Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64 is kind of just like another theory that you've heard back then that's just much more ridiculous. But to a small child, it wouldn't be. And what this links to is that in Royal Raceway, you can see Princess Peach's castle, and you can drive up to it, and it basically looks like it was directly ripped from Mario 64. In fact, it probably was. But yes, many people just like theorize and speculate if there's a way you can bust through the doors and somehow get inside the castle and see more of Mario 64, and even maybe play the game if you manage to find out how to do the secret. I'm just assuming this wasn't included in the image because it has to do with a game that's not Super Mario 64. It does mention the Rainbow Ride Village that's in Super Smash Bros. Melee, but that just connects a bit more closely. And with that, that ends off this list. There's other things such as the baby penguin mimicking Mario's movements, or how the boulders in Hazy Maze Cave spawn, or just other things like janky stuff with the hitboxes and other Panon topics. But I just feel like it wasn't too necessary to include here, that it would have made the video just way too long. But that ends it off there, and before the video also ends, I just want to quickly shout out the Super Mario 64 Beta Archive. The image you're seeing right now is from the stuff that channel has been making. It's really amazing stuff, and if you love all the weird things that have been going on with Mario 64 lately, then you'll probably love that channel. There's only about 5 or so videos right now as this is uploaded, but hopefully there's more in the future. And until then, thank you for watching.